I said, well, what the hell? Skip the next dose too. So in the last 54 hours, I've not had any metformin. And my blood sugar is really good. I didn't expect that.
Paul, how did you find carnivore?
Well, it took me a while, actually. And I'm Paul Salvatierra. And Salvatierra is a Latin word. It means salvation, salva, save, and terra, meaning earth, save the earth. It was the battle cry back in 1452 in Europe, fighting back the invading mongrels from the east. And even though it sounds Italian, I don't have any Italian in me. It's just a Latin word. So I'm 67 years old. I'll be 68 this July. And I'm 5'9" tall, 175 centimeters. I weigh about 176 pounds now. One time it was 225. So I've down about 50 pounds over the last 2.5 years. And I'd like to get down to about 154, about 70 kilograms, about 80 kilograms now. So you go back 30 plus years. I've been type 2 diabetic. High blood pressure. Actually, I was diagnosed on May 4th, 1992. I had 3 kids. Right now they're 41, 39, and 33, and they're a mom, and she's my only daughter. And then the next one, he's my son, and he makes artificial legs. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later, but he himself is an amputee from a childhood cancer. And the youngest one's an accountant and a marathon runner, and he's going to Germany to run the marathon over there in September. Anyhow, you know, I was for about 15 years. The last 15 years, I've been using insulin to control my blood sugar, and life is very stressful, and I kind of had a hard life. Never made a. I've got an engineering degree. I worked as an engineer, supervisor in production most of my life. A lot of stress, one income, 3 kids to get my wonderful kids, greatest kids a man could ask for. And, marriage dissolved. And when you have high medical expenses and you're working for a company, they go, he's not so valuable and he's costing us a lot on our medical program. So I went through a lot of jobs. And so I approached 62. I started drawing my Social Security, which I paid into all these years. And I make a little more than the average Social Security check in America. And I was living in North Carolina for nearly 30 years. I basically raised my family in North Carolina. But 2 of my son and my 2 oldest had wound up in Philadelphia. And I was kind of all alone in North Carolina. And so I moved and I came up to Pennsylvania here, and I got near the Amtrak train line so I could take the train into Philly to see my kids. And the great thing about Philadelphia, the land of brotherly love, if you're 65 years or older, you get free subway, bus, and rail service. You don't pay. So you can get around town real easy. So I went and got a job, and so in this country, when you turn 65, you go on Medicare. And for many years, you change jobs, you change insurance plans, you may not have insurance, you may be on the government program, yada, yada, yada. Well, so here it is, July 1st, 2021. I'm 65 years old, start going to the doctors, walk in. they do a one of these home test kit A1Cs. I'm 12 point something, way high. So I tell the doctor what I'm doing, and so we got high blood pressure, we got type 2 diabetes, and she writes me a prescription for some insulin and stuff, and a couple of good things. Well, metformin's a wonderful drug, but I have tremendous diarrhea with it. And for many years, I took metformin and Imodium to control the diarrhea. Not a good combination, I don't think. Anyhow, so I go to the pharmacy to pick up these insulins, and the pharmacist, she's a little Asian lady, and she says, this ain't going to work. And she starts talking about the insulin profiles, how they're piggybacking on each other. And I says, well, I've been trying to explain this to doctors for 15 years. I can't control my blood sugar. And I said, I know what, I said, I have a science. I said, I'm into science. I'm into background. I said, I know what you're talking about when you say insulin profiles and how the insulin's released into your body. And I says, I understand what you're saying. I'll go back and see my doctor. And she says, well, do you want these insulins? I go, why would I want them if they're not going to work? So I drove back to town here. I live in a little town 15 minutes from the city here, and went down to the doctor's office. No appointments available, but there was one the next morning at 8 a.m. So I saw this primary care physician, and we decided, and I kind of like this physician, and they're all residents, okay? They're there for a couple of years and they're gone. And so I said, why don't you send me to a certified diabetes educator? Because I figured they would probably kind of help guide the primary care physician. And so very quickly I was able to go see the, somebody trained and indoctrinated to the American Diabetes Association. And she had a sheet, this massive healthcare system that they got their guidelines, but she had this sheet with all the insulins listed on it, front and back. And the rapid acting ones, the long acting ones. It's just, here's the 2 insulins I recommend for you, and these would be good starting dosages. I will contact your primary care physician and make that recommendation, and they'll take it from there. She says, I'm also going to recommend you see an endocrinologist because you have been diabetic for so long. So I go back and see my primary care physician, and all that happens. And she wants to double up on my, she wants to increase my blood pressure medication because it's creeping up, or give me another blood pressure medication. And I said, what about the third alternative? She said, yeah, there is a diabetes medication and also lowers blood pressure. I said, no, I wasn't talking more medicine. I was talking walking and diet. And she goes, oh, she goes, that usually don't work. I says, look, why don't I go buy a blood pressure cuff, learn to take my own blood pressure, and give me 10 weeks. And I had already started walking. I started walking right about July 1st. And I was walking about 4 miles a day. And so she said, okay, I'll give you, I think it was November 11th or something I had till November 9th. Anyhow, so I go see the endocrinologist, and, there's some blessings in life. I never had the seeds in my mouth for wisdom teeth. I never got wisdom teeth. Never went through the pain and torture of having those out or anything like that. And the other blessing I have is I'm allergic to statins. I can't take them. Tried 2 different statins, and 20 days later I got crippling bilateral muscle pain. Can't, worse than the flu. And so I don't have discussions about statins with doctors because I'm allergic to them. And it's just kind of a thank you. So I'm talking to this guy, this endocrinologist, and he was not a MD. He was a master's degree nurse, RN nurse, and he was like a nurse doctor, a assistant, whatever they call them. So I said, well, how many carbs should I be eating a day? What should I be eating? He goes, let's lower your carbs to 30 carbs a meal and then 2 15-carb snacks. So we're talking 120 carbs a day. I go, first time I ever heard anything like this, okay? Because, my diet from the Diabetes Association is 240 carbs. So it was half the normal carbs, which is a good start, I guess. And so he says, I only eat 20 carbs a day. Man, what? So went off in my mind, when we get out of here, get on the internet and see what low carb eating is. So that's when I found keto, if you will. And during all this time going to these doctors and stuff, I had found Jason Fung, of all people. And I was listening to his stuff. Very impressed with the man. And he's kind of humorous in his own way. And I kind of like the way he delivers his presentations. And so then, once I started tuning into low carb, I quickly found Ken Berry. And I started in on Ken Berry's group when he was on Patreon. Before he had I was there when he went into the Mighty Network platform for his private group. And so I learned about keto, ketovore, carnivore, which they have very definite definitions of. And I guess I started out, I was eating 30 carbs a meal, 3 meals. Then I kind of went to 2 meals. And then I went to 30 carbs a day, 20 carbs a day, 10 carbs a day, then close to 0 carbs a day. And so about September 1st of 2022, almost 2 years ago now, about a year and a half ago, I was pretty much carnivore. And I guess you'd call it maybe 95% carnivore. Well, what the hell does 95% carnivore mean? Here's what it means to me. It means 19 out of 20 is 95%. Okay? 21 days and 3 weeks. So one time every 3 weeks, you don't eat carnivore. A cupcake slipped in or something. Something happened, okay? Baked potato, whatever it was. So it's 98% carnivore. That's 49 over 50. So that means in 7 weeks, 49 days, a cupcake slipped in. And so I'm kind of aiming towards 99% carnivore, which would be 3.64 days, 3.65 days that I'm not carnivore. So maybe, when you start looking at it that way, I don't know. It's something recent I've come up with. Here's my issue. I've done away with all my blood pressure medications. They're all gone. All my rapid acting insulin, it's all gone. Heartburn medication, all gone. I have a damage inside my throat. I have damage from years of. I used to be a large bottle of Tums every week, or not every week, but every month. But whatever, how long they lasted. And I always had a couple of bottles. I had one in the vehicle, one at work. So I get to the point where my routine was about 30 units of Lantus insulin every day and 4 tablets of metformin, 500 milligrams each, extended release, and doing what I had to do to control diarrhea. And sometimes I would lessen the metformin. I do wear a continuous glucose monitor. I've been wearing one for a couple of years, so I have a lot of data and I have a lot of reports. And all this time, I had to figure all this out. Only I could call up Ken Berry and he's my doctor and we figured this stuff out together. I always had to figure everything out like I was my own. I had to figure this all out. And so I came up with a scheme. And so about a year ago, well, let's just last September, this was my scheme. I would look at my, one of my reports I get off my CGM is it's a 7-day average of my blood sugar. So if my blood sugar is at 115 or less, then that next week I'll reduce my Lantus insulin by 1 unit, trying to wean down off the Lantus. But I had some problems with the CGM. I thought I was doing well. I really wasn't doing well. And I started listening more to Chafee and Baker. And then I found I'd heard about, but never really listened to, Bart K. And so I started listening to Bart K. And I said, you know what? This guy, the average medical doctor has an IQ between 120 and 130. That's what Google says. And I have met a few very, very highly intelligent people in my life. And when I started seeing what Bart K was doing, I said, you know what? This guy is a class act. And he is, I'd bet $1,000 right now. He's never fudged data in his entire life. He's never faked it. If the data wasn't right, he just said, it's not there. I can't change it. So what I liked about Bart K was everybody who he didn't hold in very high regard, neither did I. And people he held in high regard, I kind of did too. And you know, sometimes we dream. And I thought, just imagine if my primary care physician could present me to a panel of doctors and scientists. And we had Ken Berry there, and we had Ben Bickman there, we had Bart K there, Chafee, Baker, all the greats. I bet you in an hour, they couldn't improve my situation. I bet you they couldn't come to a consensus. Maybe. And then I saw Bart K does consultations. So I emailed him and I said, how much? He says, 1 hour, this much money. I said, well, in my little town here, if you go to the doctors and you pay cash money, say you don't have any insurance, you need a doctor, it's $300 cash or your card or whatever for 10 minutes. And if it goes longer than that, it's going to be more money. And you don't know what you're going to get on the other side of that door. How good is that doctor going to be? Well, Bart K was was cheaper than that. So it was 2022, no, 23, last year, November 30th, my Thursday evening, met with Bart K on Zoom, and we went over all my stuff. And he says, don't worry about your A1C. It's going to very slowly come down. He says, because of the way you're eating, you're doing the right thing for your body. And I've heard, matter of fact, just in the last day or two, I listened to somebody you had on. They said the same thing I'm trying to say about Bart K's interpretation of the A1Cs. And so we talked a lot about a lot of things. And the last 20 minutes was devoted to the Cerule products. And I heard Bart K's story about his not going blind due to the Cerule. And I have a lot of faith in Bart K. So 5 days later, in my mailbox, I've got the whole array of Cerule products. There's 4 nutraceuticals. The flagship product, the Stem Enhancer Ultra, I take 4 doses of every day. And then there's a Cyactive, which is for inflammation, a Plasma Flow for blood flow, and then there's a packet. I think that's the collagen type thing, collagen active. And I'm not 100% sure of everything all these things do, but I thought this was a pretty good regime. So it's like 7 doses. So if you buy it at retail, it'd be $80 a dose. It's big money. And I realized, smart enough to realize that this is not a 1 month thing. It ain't like you take this stuff for 1 or 2 months and you're going to be done. You have to take it for quite a while to see results. So I had the money, so I tapped into some funds I had and I said, I'm going to do this for about a year. And by becoming an independent business operator under that multi-level marketing system, I was able to get the price down to about $50 a dose. And so right now I spend about $350 a month on that product. And hopefully I'll sign up a few people under me and eventually I'll get my product for free. So look at my regime now. And so my pancreas does not make enough insulin for my body. Let's look at the pros, the blessings first. 30 years, type 2 diabetic, probably walking around with a blood sugar at 300 all the time. Okay. One, good for my mental health, but I have no eye damage to my eyes from my diabetes. I have no kidney damage. I have no damage, no heart damage whatsoever. I got a very clean heart. I wound up in the hospital unexpectedly, and I was hallucinating. They didn't know what was wrong with me, and I got scanned many times for many things, and found out I have a pristine heart, and which kind of surprised me. Anyhow, so the C-peptide test tells you how much insulin your pancreas is making, and I don't even bother with my doctor. I go straight through to ownyourlabs.com and I order a C-peptide test, which comes with a fasting insulin test, and it's $36. And I also threw in A1C and a cholesterol just for kicks. They're $8 a piece. And I do this every 90 days. So my last one was December 26th. And the most important factor here is the C-peptide. So the normal range for C-peptide is, with LabCorp, is 1.1 to 4.4. I'm at 0.7. I'm below the low end of the range. If I was 0 or 0.1, that would be considered a type 1 diabetic, so you look at it and say, well, you're just going to have to live with Lantus insulin for the rest of your life. You're going to need this baseline of insulin, and you're not going to eat many carbs either because, if I consume 60 carbohydrates, my blood sugar is going to go from 100 to 250, 300. It's going to take a sweet time coming back down. And then the next day, it's going to it may go to 200 and come back down. Even though I didn't eat anything, it just has this repeat lingering effect. So when you go off the wagon, the CGM doesn't lie. So today is Sunday for me. I got up this morning. I have the same routine every Sunday. I go to the restroom. Then I weigh myself with nothing, and my weight's been pretty steady. I'm probably losing a pound a month right now. Very slow, but I'm not gaining anything. It's really great. And I look at my 7-day blood sugar average, and I have a spreadsheet, and so I track all this stuff. And so then I make a decision. Okay, how much Lantus insulin am I going to take every day? And I record that. And the last 2 weeks have been kind of interesting. Like I say, I've slowly been increasing the dosage of the one cerule product there, the stem cell enhancer, and I decided, I said, diarrhea came back into my life. And he said, I'm just going to try cutting my metformin in half. Instead of 4 tablets a day, I go to 2. And then I missed a dose. I was taking them 12 hours apart. Since I work second shift, I take one when I get home at midnight, and I take one at noon the next day. Well, I missed a dose. And my blood sugar was still good. Hey, I said, well, what the hell? I'll skip the next dose too. So in the last 54 hours, I've not had any metformin. And my blood sugar is really good. I didn't expect that. And I really didn't expect how my blood sugar is. And I started a new job. So here I am, 67 years old, and going back to work because they're paying me really good money. I'm just a factory rat. Okay, I'm not doing engineering or anything like that. And the way I got the job was I went to a temporary agency. They said, "Can you do this? Have you done this?" I said, yeah, I know that kind of stuff. Even though I was familiar with the machines, how those machines work, I never ran one. So I'm training to be a punch press operator. We make metal roofing products and metal gutter products. And some of the machines that I run at night spit out 144 parts per minute. Every 4/10 of a second, a part's coming at you. And there's a little catch basin that they kind of stack up in, kind of. You got to make sure it's adjusted right. And when 50 get in there, you got to get your finger under it, lift it up, and yank it out quick. You don't want to crash the next one to crash into it, otherwise you're going to have a mess. And then you do the next 50. You make bundles of 100. You pack them in boxes. And so I was the grandpa. Everybody laughing. Oh, we hired a grandpa. He ain't going to make it. And they said, I think they were betting against me. And I made rate the first night. And I did over 40,000 pieces. And nobody told me what rate was, but they just said you made rate. The girl who was training me, they asked her why I didn't run the machine. And she says, he ran the machine 7 hours. What's the problem? He goes, he ran 5,000 parts every hour for 7 hours? She goes, yeah. And she goes, oh, we thought that was you. Anyhow, haha, laugh on them. I don't know if this metformin's going to hold. I think it will. I looked on the internet at the half-life of how fast metformin goes through you. And, it's been, I've missed 5 doses already now. And I cut it in half. Now I cut it out, and blood sugar's holding. And boy, I never expected that to happen. All I can tell you is it's just, sometimes you talk about it was mid-November, and everybody was getting excited about running, and sprinting was the big thing in the carnivore world now. All you got to do every day is 5 sprints, maybe every other day, 5 sprints, 40 yards each. That was it. So mine were about 30 yards. I couldn't even run. In high school, I was a wrestler, cross country, and track and field. Okay? Here I was, 67 years old. I could not run. And the other thing I did was every time I went upstairs, the apartment I live in, there's some stairs. I'd hit those stairs just as hard and fast as I could. And it wasn't much to begin with, trust me. But that's all I did. So New Year's, I'm at my grandchildren's place, and my 9.5 wise guy grandson, my only grandson, bounces a football off the back of my head, and hard. And I decided I'm going to run him down, put him down on the ground, and he's going to pay for this. Well, he looked over his shoulder and he goes, oh my God, Grandpa is gaining on me. And he runs competitively 5,000 meter races, and he does 7-minute miles at the young age of 9. And he had a scared look on his face. And I was smiling from ear to ear. I was running. And my daughter said, Dad, you're running. Like, I know. And, we talk about some of the things that have happened, and I had a sore on the side of my knee. It was like a perennial pimple sore, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes it was open, sometimes it scab over. 25 years that was there. 25 years. It's gone. Okay? I used to get these things on my skin. They were like, it looked like I fell and scraped myself on the pavement or the sidewalk. But it wouldn't really heal. And it was kind of watery. And you could just scrape it off, and take months for the stuff to heal. Most of that's gone. Almost all of it's gone. What little I got left is it gets better every day. A little bit. It's almost all gone. And I'm like, my teeth. I brushed my teeth. I could skip brushing my teeth for 2-3 days. My teeth are still smooth. I hadn't been to the dentist in 5 years. I had to have something done. And he said, wow, he says, you haven't been to the dentist in 5 years. And he says, you look pretty good. I go, well, thank you, That's kind of it. I have a lot of my own personal philosophies. And I really think what we need to take some of these top carnivore people, lock them in a room, and say, you people need to define what carnivore really is. Or somehow define the degrees of carnivore, because carnivore is what you make it. You make your own rules. There's various guidelines, but there's nothing like written in stone anywhere that I have found. Maybe you know of something. I don't know. But some people are, oh, you can't have coffee. And then other people say, you can have coffee. And people are putting butter, eggs, and cream and everything else in it. And I saw this one lady, she's very strict keto. And she goes, well, I put artificial sweetener in my coffee. And she said, I've done so for 20 years. And I go, oh, okay. And so maybe she's an outlier. I don't know. I've learned a lot over the last, I've been at this now for like 32, 33 months. Going to close out my third year here. Before this, I couldn't tell you what cholesterol numbers meant. Now, if you give me your cholesterol numbers, I could tell you how you're doing. I understand blood sugar numbers now better than ever, and how these things relate. And I'll just say this one thing. I don't know if you saw the announcement or not, but Ken Berry and his wife just got a big publishing contract. And thank God. Because I have Ken Berry's Common Sense Lab book. If you're any type of diabetic, you really need this book. Because inside are 4 pages where Ken Berry talks about monitoring your blood sugar on a daily and continual basis and how to interpret these things. And he is the most well-written. Ken Berry is an outstanding writer. His book that he's been toying with for Proper Human Diet, I guess he's been working on it for a couple of years. I'm sure will be the best book ever on the topic. Then you go to Part K, muscle meat. No organ meats, or if you do eat organ meats, keep it within the percentage of the cow. Organ meats are about 1% of a cow. So if you eat 100 pounds, if you have 100 steaks at a pound each, then you get a pound of liver. I don't eat liver. I don't eat sardines. I don't eat little fishy things in oil or any of that stuff. I don't do it. I don't even hardly eat fish. Breaded and deep fried, it was a favorite, but just plain old fish doesn't do anything for me anymore. I'll have some shrimp now and then, but and you go look at I guess Chafee. It's beef, salt, and water. No artificial sweeteners. Yeah, he's totally anti-artificial sweeteners. You go to Eric Westman, he goes, well, if you need some sugar-free Jello to get you over the hump and get you adapted to this, well, that's fine. Go ahead and do it. So all these people are kind of somewhat all over the place, and when it comes to spices, I was a black pepper fiend. I put black pepper on everything, and a good quantity of it before I started all this programs. And my black pepper grinder rarely ever gets touched anymore. Rarely. I just don't have a desire for it.
How about salt?
Oh yeah, salt. I've been using Redmond salt since I don't know, back in the '80s somewheres. See, my hobbies in my life have been ice cream making. And I don't mean just a little bit of ice cream. I mean, I made 3 half gallons every week for years. Bread making and pizza making. And to get a compliment from my son and my sister, if you got a compliment from them on something you cooked, oh my God, you know, look out. That was like a rarity. And my son one time pushed back his plate and he says, "Dad, don't change a thing. You nailed it. You got it. Your pizza's wonderful." And that's all gone. And I don't try to replicate. I don't try to make a carnivore mashed potato. I don't try to make a carnivore pizza. So because it's not going to match my memory of what I got in my brain. I'll just live with the memories. But I've created new foods. So I make ultra thin hamburgers or ultra thin ground chicken burgers. I use any ground meat or combination of ground meats. I'll use a little seasonings, and on the ground beef patties, which I kind of like the best, I'll put the topping for a bacon cheeseburger on top of it. I don't do this very often, but maybe once a month, something a little bit different. And I think I want something different, and maybe some dill pickle relish and some cheese, and I may buy a small tomato and chop it up and season it, and put it all on there, and I put it on a plate and I cut it very carefully and arrange it just so I can get a mouthful of all the flavors at once, just like I was biting into a hamburger. Bread that don't exist anymore, and am I going to make some kind of weird keto bread or carnivore bread? I ain't bothering with it. It's not going to live up to what I had before. It's just. And if I'm 99% carnivore, I guess 3 times a year I could do something. I could have one meal of something that's off base. And if I did that, I would. My son does a unique thing. He takes a sub roll that's crusty on the outside. When he cuts it open, he carves out all the bread inside. That's maybe half the carbs is tossed away. And you want to get rid of more of the carbs? Take the top and toss that away. Just load up those meat in the bottom, and I'll just eat it like this. I'll just shove it in like this, and I can have a hoagie, an Italian sandwich, and maybe I took in 20 carbs, 25 carbs. I kind of almost that was kind of almost keto.
So can I clarify a couple of points?
Yeah.
So right at the moment, just to clarify, you are only on your insulin at the moment. You've given up everything else, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And just like I say, just the last 60 hours, I've done away with the metformin and blood sugar's holding. And I it's been a very long, hard journey. And a lot of it I had to do on my own. I have an interesting little. I go into the doctor's office, go see my normal primary care physician, and the nurse starts playing. I don't know what she was playing, but she goes, "Oh, you're type 2 diabetic, yeah?" Making conversation. "Oh, what'd you have for breakfast this morning?" I said, "My first meal of the day, I had 4 strips of thick cut bacon, which is about a little over 5 ounces of bacon, and I had 2 whole eggs, and 2 egg yolks. Well, no wonder you're diabetic. You're not eating a balanced diet. And I said, I didn't hold back. She started this. I said, lady, ma'am, you don't know. You're not a dietitian, I don't believe. And even if you were, you're wrong. Well, she left. She got up and left. Doctor comes in and told me I scared her. I said, I didn't threaten her in any way whatsoever. I just told her she didn't know what she was talking about. And, my older sister passed away. She was a lifetime smoker and smoked right up to her death. Lung cancer. Smoked right up to the day she died. And she told me, she says, Paul knows Paul knows a lot about a lot of things. But what really ticks people off is he's usually right. Because I'm kind of like Bart K. I don't speak about what I don't know. I've seen Bart K on his. He goes, well, I don't know how that works. I'd have to research it. I can't speak about that because I don't know. I can't speak about 480 3-phase voltages in electricity. I don't understand it. I'm not trained in it. I can't offer you any advice about it. 110, 220, I can handle all that.
So just to go back a step, your A1C now is how much when you last had it tested?
My primary care physician and I ran several experiments on Paul, on me. We did a month with no insulin. We did a month with no metformin. So we weren't too concerned about where the A1C was going. But my latest A1C was 6.3, I believe. And that was on the end of December last year. And Bart K said, don't worry about it since you're eating all the proper foods. Bart K is of the opinion that A1C is not all it's cracked up to be. And there is no proof that, an A1C under 5.6 is going to guarantee you good health. There's a lot of it trends that way. But again, so many of these dietary things, there is no actual proof.
So what does the future look like for Paul from here? You just started
The,
working, yeah. So you just started working, and I mean you've been, as you mentioned, you've been working all this out on your own.
yeah.
What does the future hold?
Oh, I'm excited. I feel better than I have felt in a long time. 3 years ago, I could not do an overhand basketball jump shot in basketball. I couldn't do that. The lower back pain, my bottom disc, my last disc in my spine is very arthritic and deteriorated. I had a job where I had to toss things up into a bin up overhead. I had to toss it underhand. I now play basketball with the grandkids. Uh, I've got a lot of energy. I went back to work. I'm doing a pretty physically demanding job. And I'm going to stash some cash. And I've got, yeah, my grandchildren are 2 through 9, and there's 4 of them. And I expect to see every one of them graduate from high school and the years beyond. I expect to have many joys for my grandchildren. Uh, my grandchildren are very talented. Uh, I want to be able to enjoy them. And I'll just say this. When you're eating a lot of carbs, at least for me anyhow, I was on the standard American diet. And I was walking around with high blood sugar all the time. My mental health was not, I had bouts of depression. God gave me strength. I got my son through cancer. Doctor told him, you got 1 chance of 10 being alive next year. I told the doc, Keep your numbers to yourself. We don't want to hear it. I looked at my son and says, we're going through this, coming out the other end. We were very fortunate. Only 50 kids a year get this cancer that he had. It was a bone cancer in his ankle. Thank God it was in his ankle. There's no flesh in your ankle. So the tumor popped right out. You could see it right below his ankle bone. And we just got lucky. Every doctor we went to was the best. And then and some were older than dirt. Some were extremely talented surgeons. And the man who removed his leg, they said there was no radiation, there's no chemo, there's no nothing. Cut it off. Hope we got a 2-inch margin of safety from where we cut to where we first find cancer when they examine the leg. We got 5 inches. These doctors rarely see success. They were overjoyed. And I know this is probably contra to what a lot of people would like to hear, but I don't think the carnivore group is ever going to get real big because it's an addiction. And a lot of people aren't going to give up the pizza and the donuts and the pasta and the potatoes, and they're not going to walk away from that. Everybody who's in this knows how hard it is. I mean, most of us are addicts. They don't call it comfort food for nothing.
You make a good point, that it's an addiction and it's going to be really hard to get people over. But yeah, we just got to try one at a time, right? Just go. It's a slow process, but
Well, if you're ready, you're ready.
Paul, do you have a YouTube or an Instagram or anything like that if people want to reach out to you?
No, I'm not much on social media. I'm on Facebook. I don't know if you could ever get a message to me. If you got it to me, I don't know if I could ever get back to you. But my name is very simple. Think Salvation, SALVA, and think Terra is an Earth, TERRA. And I'm Paul, and my middle name is Dominic, so it's Paul D. Salvatierra. And that's at Gmail. And I'll talk to anybody. I'll help anybody. I think the biggest thing I see of anything making mistakes is some people jump into carnivore far too fast, and it can be very injurious to your digestive system.
Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us. I really appreciate it.